Supposedly, I can't start a live event until the live event begins. The time that's been designated for it. How long are we off here? Yeah, we're 1 minute to go. Yep. That's lovely. More shit to click on to get things working on this goddamned fucking computer. It's the internet and all these EU fucking regulations up the wazoo, coupled with my need for a fucking ad blocker. And, you know, my computer just being a piece of shit. Oh my god, man. It's hell being online. You know, shit should be easier than this. Alright. I think we're actually good to go. Welcome, folks. Welcome to The Irish News Rundown, 14th of September 2018. Just fade that out. A stand-in intro tune for a real one that's going to come along sometime. Mars, the Bringer of War, this Holst composition. I love it. Let's get the juices flowing. I need more of that right now myself. Alright folks, I'll put it to you plainly. Every day that passes, I think less and less of the Irish people. I am Irish myself. I just don't feel much of a connection to a good majority of the people on this island who have Irish blood and Irish heritage. Because, to put it bluntly, they don't have much of a connection to their Irish blood and Irish heritage. This is what, for me, defines Irishness. But right now we have two main competing ideologies of what Irish means. One of them is a proactive ideology, another is a inactive, just a passive ideology. The first is money, generally. That's not in the American way of, building your empire, reaching for the stars, reaching for that American dream of, owning your own business, having a wife and family, or husband and family, or what have you. When I say money, I think, whoever comes along and offers the most jobs to the Irish people, that's who we back. Now, not everyone who holds this ideology will recognize it when I describe it that way, because they may not be the ones to say, well, no, we can't resist our Shannon Airport being used to refuel American war machines on the way to carpet bomb Iraq, because then the Americans, they'll take away the jobs that they gave us. We can't leave the EU because the economy will implode and then we'll have less jobs. We can't ask Apple for all of those taxes that our government has let them off without paying, because then Apple will leave and we'll have less jobs. And not that Apple was actually, because this is an actual situation. I think it was as far back as 2 years ago now. We are like this massive fucking tax shelter. Like what do you call that island? Panama. But that's more of a banking tax shelter. We're kind of like that, the Panama of Europe. And now that we're part of the EU, it's not just that Apple and all these other corporations owe billions. I'm talking like $14 billion was the was the grand total of what these crooks have let Apple away with. It's not that they just owe it to the taxpayer of Ireland. They owe it to the EU, you know? Like, it's kind of a mafia thing, you know? Like, okay, so the little man on the street that's picking up the protection money, you know, you as the like overboss of the whole city, you're probably going to see like 1% of it, really, in reality. But you know, you can't let people fuck around with your reputation. So if like some poor schmuck running a bakery doesn't turn over his protection money, you're going to step in, you know, and that's what the EU did. And seriously, there were a few arguments for us to not push Apple to pay their corporation tax. But the most common one was, well, if Apple doesn't get their way, then they're going to take away our jobs. Thing is that Apple wasn't like setting up manufacturing plants or commercial outlets per se here. It was more like they set up a subsidiary that, say, would, you know, hire maybe 100 people at most, and they would like sell a component that would go to make an iPhone or something really tricky like that, a real classy fucking loophole. Or rather, this subsidiary bought the iPhones from the manufacturer and then sold at price to the global iPhone market. I'm not totally up on the details, but you can see how something like this would happen. So we're not talking like massive amounts of jobs here. We're not talking about 14 billion euros worth of jobs here. Yet, this was the refrain. This is how, sadly, a lot of Irish people think. Now, the mainstream, they seem to like this kind of pathetic self-image, I guess, because, you know, they're paid off by these international interests. So the others out there who would back the whole line of, oh, well, we shouldn't ask Apple for that money, we shouldn't kick out America from the airport, and the media would just sell them, you know, these little half-truths that they can repeat to each other, basically. And anyone who dares to stand up and say, hang on a minute, that's not quite right. Should we question why we think this way? Oh, no. Here, look at this list of half-truths and non-truths. So that's the passive ideology that runs this country. And there's also the active ideology that it's kind of been around for the last 30 years at a push, but only in a seed form. And I'm sorry for drinking my stout while the microphone is on. It's just so fucking tasty, you know. It's been in a seed form, and it's been acculturated, and particularly with international incidences, especially with developments in the United States and places like Sweden and other fucking shitholes like that. Not to unduly criticize those countries, Ireland is also a shithole. This lefty lunacy where basically everyone's the same, we have no identity, and in 2015 the Irish Times had this like opinion piece about this black guy from Africa. He wasn't born here. He just lived here for like maybe 10 years. And the headline, I don't remember the thrust of it, but it was kind of like a quote from him that basically, I go to the pub, with the lads after work on Friday. I'm just as Irish as everyone else. This is it. If you're European in any gradient or form, you don't have an identity. It's only if you're African, Asian, South American, or Aboriginal that you have an identity. And I guess this thing has been beaten to death so many times on the internet by other pundits. I need not wreck your head with it today. But it has been said, and this point bears repeating, that Ireland is due to outstrip shitholes like Sweden in terms of this lefty lunacy. And going by what we're about to look at today on the Irish News Rundown, we might actually see the first full-blown socialist revolution in Europe. And this might sound a little far-fetched to those out there in listening land, and I would totally I totally understand. But this is what we have. This is the reality of it. We have, and to rehash what has been said a million times on the internet, restriction of speech, restriction of freedom of assembly. There's only one way to think, and if you deviate from that, you will be caught up in the 1984 dragnet. Your platforms will be taken away. You'll probably lose your children, lose your job. In a stunning leap of censorship, the European Union are about to vote on and enact, well, the European Parliament specifically, are about to vote on and enact two particular articles that will introduce a link tax. Basically, if you want to link to another person's content online, sorry, not persons, but like a corporation, like say, I don't know, the Irish Times, the Sun, then you're going to have to pay money. That's bonkers. The other article it suggests that all of the world's social media platforms install a filter that will make sure that when it comes to Europeans anyway that use their services, will not be able to upload any copyrighted material whatsoever. That instead of and if maybe you've heard on YouTube, if you upload the wrong thing, you can either have your ads, your monetization of that video taken away. It could be restricted in several countries. It could be restricted altogether. And if it's a particular egregious act of copyright infringement, it'll just be taken down altogether. The EU want it so that the content just doesn't get onto the platform at all. It's stopped after upload and during processing. So, are we close to a USSR style situation? I would suggest so. And folks, if you are listening out there on the live stream, please let me know in the chat. Let's make this as interactive as possible. And also, I'm trying out a new thing. Instead of just like directly streaming to YouTube, I've set up an event to give people a little forewarning a few hours before this stream. And there was a different way of connecting to YouTube. And I tried to preview the stream, and although it says okay, good, bad, it fluctuates, I am given absolutely no other indication that I'm actually streaming. God. But I'm just going to continue as if I am. Worst comes to worst, I'm also recording this video, so I think we're good. So I don't have a whole load of like news articles or whatever to show you. I think that this one issue, which has developed, I think on Tuesday or Monday of this week just ending, and it's particularly egregious all by itself. I'm gonna skip to it there in the video feed. Now, this is from the Irish Times, September 11th, so that would be, this was a Tuesday night that this occurred. Or no, was it Monday night? Yeah, Monday evening, Monday night. Let's look for the media narrative here. It's very important that the Irish Times has their headline, "Masked Men Secure Dublin Property After Housing Activists Removed." Now, the landlord that owned this property hired a security firm to basically conduct the evacuation of the people basically squatting, occupying the building, as they call it. And they were wearing these balaclavas that make them look like just paramilitary thugs, basically. You could cut them out of this picture, these guys here in the back, and just find some picture from the Troubles of Northern Ireland and just paste them into it, in front of a burning building or something. And, as long as it's, visually convincing enough, as in, like, the shading is right, you could be convinced that those guys were exactly there at that moment, that we're looking at IRA men or loyalist men. But what the media won't have you thinking about, even though they have this blatant picture up here, they've made sure that in all of their headlines, they don't mention that the police force of Ireland, the Gardaí Síochána, Guardians of the Peace, were actually also wearing balaclavas. There you see them in the, if you're Irish, you recognize these color schemes and the uniform styles. There on the right, you have the average foot soldier of the Gardaí. In the middle, you have, I believe this is a sergeant. And to the left, you have more so-called Gardaí. It's important that we look at the fact that these guys are not easily identifiable. Like, can you see here in this second photo any kind of way that you would be able to identify these people? If say they committed a crime in the process of doing their duty, how would you have any recourse if you can't identify them? At the very least, they could show their faces so that, when you go in to lodge a complaint at the station, at the required station, you would be able to describe their facial features. But they don't even give you the benefit of that. There has been a statement by the Gardaí, but that has since been scrubbed from this particular article. They described the requirement for these balaclavas as a basically an intimidation tactic to dissuade violence. Now, if make of that what you will. Come on. Would that make you more peaceful, or would it make you more angry, indignant? And let's say you were at your last thread. The people who are on the streets. By the way, it's very important. I should mention there were 1,000 people on this street performing a sit-down protest, kind of, I guess, supporting the occupation of this building. I don't know the details behind the eviction. I assume it was legitimate, but a movement was built around that. These Gardaí were here basically to protect the eviction procedure from that crowd of about 1,000 people. Ordinary people. These weren't Antifa. These weren't stoner kids. These weren't hippies. These were ordinary people. Even there was a noticeable lack of hipsters. And it's quite cute that this particular article doesn't include any pictures of the protest. Very convenient angles here. It's nasty business, folks. It's nasty business. if you were at that protest and, you know, if you were there, it was probably because in some way you have been affected by the housing crisis in this country. So, you know, if you're like at your last thread, you know, and you're very close to having nothing else to lose, if you're confronted with this blatant sign of hostility by the police, by the Gardaí Síochána, against its own citizens, or rather the citizens they're supposed to protect, if you viscerally in that moment realized that the state that runs the country, that is basically dictating whether, you know, you have a roof over your head or not, is showing so much disdain for you, would you not be possibly driven towards violence? This is not a measure for mitigating violence, not by a long shot, not if you have two fucking brain cells to rub together. Now, today on Facebook, I got into it with a friend of a friend, literally with a capital F, Facebook friend. The friend, which is a friend of a friend, lowercase f, you know, he doesn't normally post political things. Actually, he never does, ever. I never saw a single political post from this guy. Just memes, basically. Because, you know, that's what he's about. Just having a laugh on the sesh kind of thing. Now, he posted a meme that equated the Gardaí to the Black and Tans, the vicious paramilitary organization that terrorized our country for, a few fucking decades, just running throughout the land, completely unidentifiable in rogue units, terrorizing ordinary people in their homes on very vague grounds of suspicion that they were armed rebels or even political rebels. So this, I think the meme was a capture from Father Ted, some farmer guy over, you know, looking over a stone wall saying, "I heard you joined the Black and Tans." Underneath it, a demand, you know, that we need to know the identities of these people. It needs to be public record who was on that street. And this capital F friend of capital F friend came along and said, "Well, you know, it's occupying private property, blah, blah, blah." I said to the lad, "Look, you know, I'm not going to argue with you about the occupation of a private property. You know, maybe that shouldn't have happened, but balaclava-clad Gardaí on the street, you know, that's not good, right?" His response was, "Oh, well, the you know, the Gardaí weren't in balaclavas. It was this private security firm." But here we have images blatantly showing otherwise. I showed him this image, and it was water off a duck's back. It was just complete, like, some kind of spooky Invasion of the Body Snatchers fucking meets 1984 kind of situation. 2 + 2 = 5. I think the guy's ego, very, very, very delicate ego, mind you, got so bruised by being proven wrong that You know, he just doubled down on his bullshit. He literally refused to believe what we're looking at right here on this screen with our own two fucking eyes. And pointed out by John, friend of the station, he said, "Oh, you know, it's because the media is just, you know, framing it that it was only the security firm that was in balaclavas, you know, to protect their identity from retribution from these activists. You know, because a bunch of hippies, you know, you gotta be scared of those hippies, man. You know, they're gonna track you down and kill your dog, you know." So let's take a deeper look into this situation. I don't know about the occupation itself. I think this group has just kind of taken ownership of the occupation. Take back the city. You know, it's kind of like take back the streets. You know, the kind of socialist, communist, anarchist movement. Kind of, you know, most big in Italy, Germany, those kind of countries. But, you know, you'd get like, you know, say in the early 2000s, late 90s, you would get like maybe 10 people every now and then trying to start it up, you know, this plants basically from the Socialist Workers' Party. So, yeah, let's have a revolution today, even though, you know, the proletariat aren't pressed enough for it. We'll just pretend, you know, we'll astroturf it. This Take Back the Streets group arranged the 1,000-strong sit-down protest in rush hour traffic in Dublin. As our friend John said, that's one way to get hated. As if traffic isn't bad enough in Dublin. Now, a certain spokesperson for this group, a TD, member of our parliament, basically, TD from Solidarity, very deeply socialist. I don't even think they're a party, but rather a kind of a loose coalition. So, socialist windbags fomenting unrest. The problem here, right? The problem here is that they have pretext. They have actual tangible issues that they're pointing towards that lend them credence, that they can use to say, "Oh, look, it's, you know, it's the communist, it's the capitalist patriarchy that's, you know, leading to not enough beds in the hospitals, 500,000 long waiting list for medical procedures, something like 10,000 people out in the streets, like homeless, an absurd amount of children homeless. People can't pay their rent, can't pay their mortgage, they're being kicked out of their own homes. These are legitimate things. And although they need to be addressed, and the people, the ordinary people attending these protests are of, you know, good character, I would say, and good of conscience and good of heart, and, you know, maybe aren't like the sharpest tools in the shed intellectually, but, you know, they're good people. They're being led to a slaughter. I think we might actually see a socialist revolution. I hope that you're seeing more clearly what I mean. That Ireland could be the first to fall to the new USSR. I mean, really think about this for a minute here, folks. Why would the European Union just let all of Europe sink into austerity and debt? Why would they let that happen under their watch and then pretend basically as if nothing's wrong other than, oh, you know, we gotta have money to pay the bankers some, you know, their fucking bonuses. It doesn't add up unless you actually look at it through the lens of maybe they're pushing the whole of Europe towards a communist revolution. In my late teens and maybe like up until I was 22, I was an active member of the Socialist Workers' Party. And it's because of this I have insight into their theories and the way that they think and the way that they conduct their operations. And I'm, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm terribly well read on the communist thinkers from Marx onwards, but they always make sure that over time they indoctrinate into you basically the pillars of what they believe. So, if I may give you a quick summary of where Marxism has started up until now. Marx came out with his idea. He ostensibly at least thought that, you know, just like happened in Russia and almost happened in Germany if it weren't for the National Socialist Workers' Party, that, you know, the world would just erupt into revolution and the proletariat will rise up and basically communize all of the means of production and all the natural resources and all of that cool stuff. Well, that didn't really work out so well because people decided to believe in different things. Some believed in fascism, some believed in National Socialism, some believed in constitutional monarchies, some believed in constitutional republics, and then you had the United States with their own ideologies. You know, this didn't pan out the way that the Marxists wanted it to. And so then you had Stalin. And, you know I'm making a monkeys of this. Like I said, I'm not totally well read, but the bare bones I'll give you. Stalin comes along and his ideas just build industry, a shitload of fucking tanks. And, you know, it's an ideology born of the circumstance. And part of that circumstance is that Russia was filled with millions of fucking people. You know, you could just corral them up and put them into factories or put them into military fatigues and hand them weapons and put them in tanks and, you know, put them behind howitzers or whatever the Russian equivalent of a howitzer was. Basically, his idea, you know, it's left over from the Civil War with the White Army, was to just pound capitalism into submission. He even had this grand plan for the takeover of Europe. His idea was, well, we've got this Adolf Hitler guy rising in Germany, and we'll make peace with this guy, and we'll make peace with Britain and America, and just act neutral. Oh yeah, we're just over here doing our crazy socialist thing, never mind us guys. And then inevitably a world war, or rather a European war, an internecine war breaks out. And after maybe a decade of fighting each other, and you can look this up, this is literally what Stalin said, they'll be all worn out, and then we can just roll in there with our tanks and turn the whole of Europe into a communist country. Now I'm having difficulty with my cigarette. Give me a sec. I'm not a guy that is going to get totally behind Adolf Hitler and the NSDAP. Not by a long shot. But to completely throw out what was going on in Germany there, it was very complex, is to be ridiculous, really, and simple-minded. One thing that Hitler did get right is that he fucking knew what was up. He knew what was coming. And he actually got intel that this is what Stalin was planning. So instead of sending his armies to the west to, realize his Fourth Reich over Europe, he, saw that there was a higher, there's a higher purpose for Germany, and that was basically to repel communism. So he sent his forces to the east. And, Western propaganda will tell you otherwise, and, it's up to you if you want to believe that horse shit. Propaganda is really easy when you have 50% of the truth on your side. So the Soviet Union kind of just exhausted itself, and here was Leon Trotsky on the sidelines, kind of, he was Vladimir Lenin's, protege. He was to be second in line, but Stalin got in there early and just kind of blindsided the guy. And became the premier, the comrade premier of Russia. And then, Trotsky just kind of wrote his materials and his theories, and eventually ran out of Russia, escaped to Mexico, and was found dead not long after with an ice pick embedded in him. So the whole idea behind Leon Trotsky was that there was this whole feeling in Europe and in America that we're kind of free, even though we're still oppressed by the bourgeoisie, the ruling classes. We've learned to love them. Because now, instead of in the early 20th century, we have these nifty things, like washing machines and eventually microwave ovens, things like this that made life easier. We had social programs. particularly in America, that just helped make life easier, and we kind of stopped being so angry. We started to look at other reasons for the chaos in society other than the Marxist propaganda that flooded us at the time, saying, oh, it's just those rich people. If you get rid of the rich people, it'll be okay. So Trotsky said that we're kind of working on a long game here. You know, we kind of need to like chip away at the idea that there's a middle class, chip away at the idea that we're somehow privileged, and, you know, basically just bide our time with, you know, quasi-socialist parties and labor unions, get into the labor unions, turn them totally socialist, and then eventually turn the quasi-socialist parties socialist. Just get into every institution possible, as well as have a vanguard, which is basically a bunch of unemployed people. You would know them today as the Socialist Workers' Party, which is an ironic term for them, but this is the image that they have to give off, that they're, you know, the workers, and give this romantic idea, but basically they're just a bunch of plotting bastards, really, that, you know, sit around with their teas and coffees and occasionally have garden beer parties and you know, discuss like the theory and practice of gradually poking at the capitalist system. And so this is what we're dealing with today when we look at groups like Solidarity and their little child organizations like Take Back the City. This is another trick that they play. They would have a socialist group, and then that socialist group will set up a campaign, you know, whether it's against this tax or the other, or it would be more like people before profit. That's a Socialist Workers' Party invention. Like a feminist kind of movement. And then those groups, those campaigns will have sub-campaigns. It's to kind of give people the impression that there's this organic kind of uprising happening. It's really insidious. Now, we have one little other puzzle piece to throw into the mix here. So, a few weeks ago now, the courts have finally decided that Drew Harris, the MI5 agent who has been responsible basically for the genocide of Irish people in Northern Ireland, also worked for the RUC, the police force up until recently in Northern Ireland, that he would become the Garda Commissioner of the country. And he stepped into that role almost 2 weeks ago now. And this is what he had to say when he first stepped into office. Dissident Republicans, biggest threat to Ireland. Particularly after the Good Friday Agreement of 1999. People down in the south have no love for the IRA and all that, because they want to put that behind them. You know, they don't want to think about this. This is yesterday. This is the trials and tribulations of a bygone era. That's the way we think about it. So, what is this guy doing saying that the biggest threat to Ireland are dissident Republicans, when we literally have no dissident Republicans? I find it an extremely convenient coincidence that we would have this situation in Dublin, seemingly sparked out of nowhere. Now, forgive me for donning my tinfoil hat, but the world is built on conspiracies. How do we know that this occupation of private property is legitimate? How do we know that the owner of this property isn't in on the game, and to some extent or another the people occupying the building aren't in on the game? To give the impression that shit's going down. On Wednesday night, while I was streaming the anti-broadcast, I had a bit of a lull period during which I took to Facebook because this was an emergent story for me. I had to take a break and actually do my research on it. I wanted to see what people were thinking, what people were saying. Now, under articles posted on Facebook, I saw comments from people saying that we need to take up arms, that we need to drive these people, out of our country. There was a foreign police van, a British police van, to be more specific, on the scene that day. So that added to the reactionary fuel. So this is what I'm thinking. A completely fabricated event to get people who wouldn't ordinarily do anything. They would just be happy to carry on in the information war, making their fellow Irish more aware of the issues and who's behind them, and, address things in a democratic manner. These otherwise peaceful people, and including myself at first before I realized what was being played here, got very fucking angry and wanted to take up arms. Like today, where's that IRA weapons cache? Let's go get it. But now we know why Drew Harris was warning us that Republican dissidents are the biggest threat to Ireland. Now, I don't think he had a crystal ball. I think he's in on the game. Now, let's think about this as well on a separate issue. Biggest threat to Ireland? It couldn't be the European Union overfishing our seas. It couldn't be multinational corporations taking advantage of our Panama Island in Europe situation. It couldn't be the Lithuanian, Chinese, Russian gangs forming and basically necessitating that the Gardaí arm themselves in order to efficiently police the country. Couldn't be that, could it? Couldn't be the corrupt politicians that are running us into the ground. That's the biggest threat to Ireland, or the corporations that hold the money bags for these politicians. Could those be? Could it be the socialist threat to Ireland? This communist conspiracy. It couldn't be the rise in mental illness and suicide. That couldn't be the biggest threat to Ireland. No, let's just pin it on this non-existent political group and then astroturf them into existence. Let's take a bit of a break here. Because, I would like to get a few people on the line and, some friends of the station, get them to throw in their 2 cents. They haven't been listening to my diatribe so far, and I haven't, given them the download on it, so I don't know how that conversation will go. We're dealing with just planet stupid here in Ireland. We really truly are probably the most, or one of the most brainwashed people in the world. I mean, think about it. We've had 700 plus years of colonization and genocide inflicted upon us. And we just assume that we're okay after all that? That we haven't lost a significant stock genetically, in terms of intelligence as well as, physical prowess? Or that, we don't have a lot of mental clutter and skeletons in a closet that is just dirtying the place up, so that we don't want to actually at a time. Okay, we're back. Yeah, broadcaster froze there. It hasn't occurred to us that our collective psyche isn't so full of rubbish and closeted skeletons that we don't even want to plumb the depths of our psyche. Is it any wonder that we can't learn our own language and promote that collectively? Is it any wonder that you as an Irishman, you could Irish person, you couldn't walk down the fucking street and see regalia and symbolism of your people's culture? Could it be? Could those two things be connected? And could the third thing be connected? Our absolute fucking inability to think. All right, let me pull up something here. It is on Twitter. Another example of how much brain rot this country has endured. Okay, so going back on screen, here we have, last week, because we couldn't get it together ourselves, and possibly because it's too soon. Someone from Brexit party, UKIP, had to come over and help us start iRexit. A party to leave the EU. This is reported by RT's Sharon Tobin on her Twitter. Very objective reporting, I would say. They have their signatures to register as an official party. I've seen footage of that party's first conference. It wasn't a bunch of, fucking knuckle-dragging right-wing wackos. Wasn't a bunch of hippies. Wasn't a bunch of hipsters. It was normal, average, everyday people. I wonder why that is. I wonder maybe if it's a sign that the sentiment in the country is maybe slightly different to how the state broadcaster and mainstream media would have us believe. So underneath we have this exchange from Phelim Monelli. God, we need to stop them from creating a party as soon as possible. This country would still on its knees. That's the way he wrote it. Still on its knees if it weren't for the help we receive from EU. Of course, I didn't want to I wasn't sure if this guy was being sarcastic or if he was really this fucking retarded. So I asked, "Are you for real?" Because I didn't want to launch into my rebuttal. We would be destroyed outside EU. What's this thing where he can't put the definite article in front of EU? Martin Burns, and this is what I want to show you. Martin Burns pipes in, "Remind me how much Ireland has received from the EU in monetary terms since 1973 again. You can exclude the bailout, or include it, up to you." There's no reflection in these people's minds as to who was responsible for the economic crash, and it's basically the mismanagement of the one currency, the single currency, and the market that drives that currency. Couldn't it be possibly because Brussels is an unelected body that doesn't give a shit about us? That, wow, surprise, surprise, they have their own ideas in mind that don't include our prosperity. I couldn't stand this fucking jackass. Let's see. I guess it doesn't matter what order I read my replies in. It's all stolen money anyway, you feckless dipshit. It's not like the EU is a giant corporation that legitimately made its money and gave it out to us as charity. That's all money from other member states. And who asked for this money anyway? Was it all worth it for our fishing waters, oil, natural gas, and public services? Wake up and smell the Fourth Reich. And I'm wondering, are these people paid fucking trolls, or are they for real? I talk to average people that I know, like family and friends, and they're all like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. But I just come across a random Irish person every now and then, and they're completely fucking feckless. I said at the beginning of this broadcast, I have no love for the Irish people. Every single day has driven a wedge between me and them. Honestly, I think they deserve to be replaced by this 1,000-foot high wave of immigration that's washing over this country every year. I think they deserve this. But the sad thing is that our ancestors don't deserve it. And neither do our progeny deserve this. These people are see, there's like 10 words I can use to describe this, and I want to find the best one. These people are a mutation and of complete fucking embarrassment. Alright, we will take our break and come back to you on the flip side. And I hope to God I have the right to play this, because I cannot think of a more fitting tune than this.
Big A, little A, bouncing B. The cat's in the cupboard, but it can't catch me. Big A, little A, bouncing B. The cat's in the cupboard, but it can't catch me.
External control, are you gonna let them get you? Do you wanna be a prisoner in the boundaries they set you? You say you wanna be yourself, do you think they'll let you? They're out to get you.
But it can't catch me.
Be exactly who you want to be, do what you want to do. I am he and she is she, but you're the only you. No one else has got your eyes to see the things you see. It's up to you to change your life, and my life's up to me.
Be exactly who you want to be, do what you want to do. I'm he and she is she, but you're the only you. No one else has got your eyes to see the things you see. It's up to you to change your life, and my life's up to me.
Hello, 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 this is the Lord God, can you hear? Hellfire and damnation's what I've got for you down there. On earth I have ambassadors, Archbishop, Vicar, Pope. We'll blind you with morality, you'd best abandon hope. We're telling you, you'd better pray, cause you were born in sin. Right from the start, we'll build a cell and then we'll lock you in. We sit in holy judgment, condemning those that stray. We offer our forgiveness, but first we'll make you pay.
Hello, 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 now here's a message from your queen. As figurehead of the status quo, I set the social scene. I'm most concerned about my people, I want to give them peace. So I'm making sure they stay in line with my army and police. My prisons and my mental homes have ever opened doors for those amongst my subjects who dared ask for more. Unruliness and disrespect are things I can't allow, so I'll see the peasants grovel if they refuse to bow.
Palaces for kings and queens, mansions for the rich, protection for the wealthy, defensive privilege. They've learned the ropes in Ireland, engaged in civil war, fighting for the ruling classes in their battle against the poor. Around every other corner stands 1984, guardian of the future, they will implement the law. He's there as a grim reminder that no matter what you do, Big Brother system's always there with his beady eyes on you. From God to local police, in home and street and school, they've got your name and number, while you've just got their rule. We've got to look for methods to undermine these powers. It's time to change the tables, the future must be ours. Be exactly who you want to be, do what you want to do. I am he and she Be exactly who you want to be. Do what you want to do. I am he and she is she, but you're the only you. No one else has got your eyes, can see the things you see. It's up to you to change your life, and my life's up to me.
Before I carry on with this broadcast, I would implore you guys to look down into the description and find a link to Eclectic Vibrations Radio's website. I will be uploading shows to this channel, as well as doing this Friday show every day at 8 p.m. The Anti-Broadcast, our flagship show, goes out at 8 p.m. every Wednesday, and that's all Irish Standard Time. Dublin time, in other words. I don't want to pull an Alex Jones here, say, we're under attack, our liberties are under attack, give more money, buy this thing, and all that bullshit. That's a horrendous imitation, but I made my point. I'm not trying to play that game at all. You know, a stopped clock is right twice a day. And this is one of these times where, we've been freaking out over the clamping down on our liberties and our ability to communicate in our open societies. But now they're really turning the screws. Like if Article 11 and Article 14 actually gets passed in the next week or so, then platforms like Eclectic Vibrations Radio are fucked, because we can't afford the overhead. I can barely afford the overhead as it is, and we're going to have to pay money to have links from our website. Like, I don't know if this is going to be like what you call it, a retroactive kind of thing. Like, is the content that we put up there before the law passed kind of okay because that's the way things worked in the past? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a whole thing where basically a lot of the internet's going to have to be shut down. Now, the one thing is that we will have, as a station, considerable more freedom on our own platform, on our own streaming service, than we would have on YouTube. So consider coming along and supporting us by being a listener, tuning into our shows, getting involved in the community. We're a lovely bunch of people. And maybe if you like our content, consider becoming a patron. Not like on Patreon, but directly. We have our own subscription service that's going to be remodeled. I think we're going to go for the co-op kind of angle here. Which, will benefit those who are contributing as much as it will benefit the station. A kind of a let's grow together kind of thing. On the event that we have to basically take all of our content down and stop streaming our station or what have you. I think we will actually take to the deep web. And I kind of suspect that a lot of Europeans are going to decide to go in that direction. Because, like, if you can't use the internet for what we've all gotten used to using the internet for, then basically it's going to be a situation where a lot of the platforms that we're used to using are just going to straight up block people from Europe because they can't afford to meet the standards. So we're going to have to use the deep web to access those platforms. The deep web isn't just for deep web websites. It's for, hiding your IP and getting around things. Using different servers to bounce your signal off of so that you can access these things. So, yeah, I think we're going to go on the deep web because I think that's going to be a thing. Which, I'm always looking for the positive in things. I think that would be very exciting. As a big fan of pirate radio, a part of me can't fucking wait because I'll get to be an actual pirate. It would be great. Oh man, sorry, I just got lost in my own fantasy world there for 2 seconds. All right, let's take a look at this news piece regarding the housing protest. The Irish Examiner didn't scrub that piece about a Garda source talking about the reason why balaclavas were used. So here we have housing activists bring Dublin to a standstill with sit-down protest. Up to 1,000 protesters have taken part in a major housing demonstration during rush hour in Dublin city centre. The protest has been organised by the Take Back the City group following an eviction at North Frederick Street last night. Gardaí have been criticised following last night's scenes on the street, where 5 activists were arrested and 1 was hospitalised. Solidarity Truth Coppinger, Ruth very bad grammar right there. Welcome to Irish journalism. She said, the Gardaí didn't cause the used and who there are used in the interest of. It's in the interests of landlords and very wealthy people. I put this at the door of the housing minister and the government. What have they got to say? They've been completely silent on this. And you can see, actually, wow. That's a good show. That's a good show. And, okay, this picture, a few yobs there. I see one homeless guy, possibly a heroin addict, but hey, fill out the numbers. But here in this picture above, it just looks like average, normal people. Except for her, that she has really, on the left, really unnaturally red hair. I had a really nice girlfriend who had unnaturally red hair, so I'm not gonna judge her character based on that. All right. Take Back the City protesters are at the northern end of O'Connell Street in Dublin. This is an earlier report. They are staging a sit-down protest which has blocked several roads in the area, and drivers have been advised to take an alternative route. Activists say they will not be intimidated and will continue to occupy vacant and derelict buildings. Okay, this makes a little bit of a... kind of changes the story a little. Like, if nobody can find homes because the system has failed them, I can kind of understand if they say, hey, there's this building, nobody's using it, it's fallen to pieces. And, at least, it's livable. Let's occupy it and house people in it. This is some revolutionary stuff right here, not necessarily in the negative sense. The article continues. Young people make up the majority of the crowd, and some say it is unacceptable for the government not to have made more progress in resolving the problem. One protester said, I just feel like 105 years on from the lockout of 1913 that there is still this incredible slum landlordism in this area, and it's just insane. Another said, there has been plenty of time to make some headway on it, and there hasn't been. I think that housing is a human right, and it's the responsibility of government to look after its people, and it has not been doing so. That's arguable, but it is better than saying nothing on the issue. They began this evening's protest at the site of the eviction in response to last night's events. The demonstration then moved to Parnell Square and O'Connell Street, where protesters began a sit-down protest. Organisers of this evening's protests said they would be taking to the roads, shutting down traffic in rush hour, to make a statement that last night's events cannot and will not be tolerated. Yeah, sure, punish ordinary people trying to get home. Fucking ace. Earlier, and here's what we want to look at. Amnesty International. Concerned about possible excessive force used by Gardaí at Dublin housing protest. Amnesty International Ireland has said that they were concerned about the reports and video footage from last night's eviction and protest at North Frederick Street. The group identified what they called excessive and unnecessary use of force by Gardaí and said they were especially worried about what appears to be a private security service personnel not displaying identity badges. And to give you an idea of basically what the average dunghead in Ireland would say in response to that, would be kind of like, why should they show their identity badges, because the people, they were doing something bad, to just convert the run-on sentences into plain English. Continuing the article, Fiona Crowley, research and legal manager for Amnesty International Ireland, said, what we have seen raises concerns about possible excessive and unnecessary use of force against what appear to be largely peaceful protesters. Whenever the lawful use of force by an An Garda Síochána is unavoidable, it must be used with restraint and in proportion to the seriousness of the law enforcement objective. Gardaí should only facilitate and support actions of private security personnel where they are lawful and do not involve excessive force. And earlier, GRA, Gardaí showed restraint in face of provocation at Dublin housing protest. We urge that these events be investigated as a matter of urgency to ascertain if human rights abuses were committed, and if so, ensure appropriate action. John O'Keefe, Director of Communications for the GRA, has defended members of Garda Síochána and the Public Order Unit who were involved in last night's protest on North Frederick Street. Mr. O'Keefe said that certain members of the Public Order Unit were deployed to the scene after intelligence was received that they may need to deploy Gardaí with specialist training. Yes, specialist training to drag hippies out of a building. Ugh. The article continues. Responding to criticism of members of the Garda Síochána wearing balaclavas, he said, "The Public Order Unit is designed to act as an optical deterrence to violence, and on the vast majority of occasions, this will be successful." He added, isn't that beautiful the way he can just explain it away? He added that members were still identifiable by the reg numbers on their shoulders. Yeah, like fuck they were. Like fuck they were, and you know, there's, I hope that someone picks it up. Hopefully Amnesty International pick it up, that there's a kind of a culture here in Ireland where any kind of like protest situation, if somebody comes up and up to a Garda and says, can I see your badge number there? You know, they get like personally offended, like, you know, what the fuck you fucking asking me for? You know, and it can turn kind of very sour very fast. I've been there as a anti-war activist. You were asking for trouble, asking for reg numbers. He added that members were still identifiable by the reg numbers on their shoulders. The hood is flame retardant, and at a time when horrific acid attacks are becoming more prevalent, it also offers some further protection from sprays or gases or any other noxious substance that may be used against our members in this unit. Oh, come on. Yeah, flame retardant is one thing. But like, come on. It's still going to heat up your face to like an extent that your skin would boil. And then what? You've got a fucking balaclava stuck to your fucking face, and then you've got to go into surgery and like have the individual fibers picked out of your permanently disfigured face. Come on, give me a fucking break. These people are full of fucking shit, man. Seriously, are they actually taking the fucking piss? In this unit. Frontline members were praised by Mr. O'Keefe for doing an incredible job protecting the general public. Against who? And exactly which members of the public? Were they attacking members of the public? I mean, come on, this is it's thick like sludge, this fucking bullshit. He goes on to say, the Public Order Unit should be especially commended for the typical restraint they always exhibit and indeed showed in the face of provocation in North Frederick Street. I wonder what kind of provocation that was, honestly. The arrests following assaults on Gardaí show how important a presence they can be in certain situations. Okay, let's think about that. One person hospitalized. How many Gardaí hospitalized? Not even like maybe a scratch on their arm, you know, because we'd certainly fucking hear about that. Oh, I got a boo-boo. Quick, you know, tell the fucking Irish Times. I'm sorry, I'm getting very angry, and no, it's not the stout I'm drinking that's making me angry. I'm only like into my second bottle. Okay, earlier. Gardaí defend wearing of balaclavas at Dublin housing protest. Is this just going to be another iteration of the same thing? Isn't that a beautiful picture? Isn't that just lovely? Oh my god, this guy's got like a fucking stick out here, the guy in the middle. Yeah, so tell me here. Let's copy image address. Open this in a new tab. Magnify. Oh yeah, okay, so tell me, guys out there. Can you see a reg number anywhere? I mean, like, how close do they want you to be in order to read the reg number on their uniforms? Because by the looks of it, if this fella here, if any of these people stepped like a few paces even closer to these Gardaí, see that stick in that guy's hand there, maybe they wouldn't get a whack over the head with it and suffer irreparable brain damage, but you know, the threat is reasonable, the threat is understandable. You know, you might not want to fucking take that risk to get a fucking Garda's registration number. You know, how cheap is your life, you know? Fuck, I fucking hate these lying motherfucking cunts, man. They just piss me off, man. Okay, let's bring this back. What has been said? Councillor Roderick O'Gorman, Green Party's Justice spokesperson? Justice spokesperson? The Green Party have a justice spokesperson? Sorry, I had to wait extra long for a burp to come up there. I didn't want to broadcast it. It says he finds the images disturbing. This is Mr. O'Gorman speaking. I just think it's quite disturbing that we see a protest being policed in this particular way. Garda Press has confirmed the balaclava is made of the same fire retardant material as the rest of their uniform and is worn, again, welcome to Irish journalism, terrible fucking grammar, and is worn for health and safety reasons. Well, make up your fucking mind. Is it to intimidate people into being docile, or is it for these completely ridiculous fucking health and safety reasons? If I happen to be in this, armed tactical unit, or whatever they call it, and I was dispatched that day, I wouldn't be fucking wearing that thing. You know, if I asked, hey, you know, why do we need to wear these? Oh, someone, you know, could like throw acid in your face. Okay, so how is this gonna protect me against acid? Like imagine if it did just magically protect these people against acid. So they're gonna have like this red, disfigured ring, oval ring around their eyes for the rest of their lives. That would be a way of identifying the stormtroopers 10, 20 years down the road. They'll be shunned for life. Oh wow, Irish Examiner really are like, you know, I take the piss out of their grammar, but holy shit, man, they've held up on this issue. Wow, they've done a lot of coverage. Okay, anti-homelessness activists say some push downstairs during Dublin raid. 2 people are due in court next month after 5 people were arrested during clashes in Dublin's north inner city over the housing crisis. Another 2 of those arrested received adult cautions. Oh my god, that's so common purpose. It's so... adult cautions, while the 5th was released without charge, and a file is being prepared for the DPP. You know what these guys should do? These 2 people do show up for court. They should say, my conscience told me that I should be in that building. And I wasn't there, but let's just assume that the stormtroopers were the initially hostile parties in the situation. Then add on, hey, what's a man to do, when you're being threatened with violence, and it's not like there's a back door I can run away in, like you're whatever animal in the animal kingdom you want to pick, including humans, put that fucker in a corner and threaten them with their demise. Yeah, you're going to have to be willing to have a fight. What else can we dig out of this? Because there is going to be some repetition. Owen from the group says a number of people were injured. 1 person suffered concussion. Someone else suffered serious shoulder injuries. Someone else had very severe bleeding and cuts on their arm. Fuck, man. It's a little more, gives a little more gravity than 1 person hospitalized. In a statement, the group also claimed that Gardaí had used physical force in the process. Gardaí have said that their only role in the eviction was to prevent a breach of the peace. Yeah, so people who aren't from Ireland, and also people who have lived their whole lives with their fucking head up their arse. I'll explain breach of the peace, right? You could be walking down the street doing anything or doing nothing, just keeping to yourself and looking straight down to the ground. A Garda, or in any kind of Commonwealth country, policemen can come up to you and say you're in breach of the peace. Now I want you to turn 90 degrees, take 4 paces forward, and then hop on 1 foot. And you're like, I don't want to do that. Well, you're obstructing the course of justice here. Do what I say. You're in breach of the peace. This is how it works. It's completely up to the officer on the scene what breach of the peace actually constitutes. I think you guys might be familiar with the arrest of Tommy Robinson outside of a court hearing. Actually, it was precisely when the judge was to, or was it the jury? I think they were found guilty at the time. Geez, sorry, I'm distracted here. So I think, I don't know, the defendants were found guilty, I think, and they were just waiting for the jury to come out. Tommy Robinson was reporting this live on YouTube at the time. And, I guess the powers that be decided, no, we can't have this guy doing this thing. No, we've got to arrest him. In full public view. And in view of millions of people around the world as well. What a really strange thing to do. Arrest a well-known rebel in front of millions of people who support him. Yeah, tinfoil hat time. But hey, what did they arrest him under? Breach of the peace. What does that even mean? Oh, well, doesn't mean anything. It just, well, you're breaching the peace right now. Do what we say or you will be arrested. Tommy Robinson knew what his rights were as a journalist and he stood his ground. But that became obstructing justice, so he got carted off for a breach of the peace. The reason why he ended up in jail is because he had a suspended sentence. Basically means if you're arrested for any reason whatsoever, it doesn't matter if you actually are charged at the end of it or convicted. No, it doesn't matter. If you're arrested at all, you're back in the slammer for the remainder of your sentence. So these guys can just act with impunity with this magical term, the breach of the peace. And they can kick your ass in a extraordinary situation if you are in breach of the peace. I think back in maybe it was 2003, 2004, 2005, I don't know. Here in my very own Galway city, the European Union decided to have a get-together in the big, what is known as the Mayrick Hotel today. It was the Great Southern Hotel overlooking Eyre Square. Just recently it was called John F. Kennedy Park because John F. Kennedy actually came to talk there during his presidency and before he was shot, of course. All of the ministers for justice decided this is where we're going to come and meet. It just happened to be Ireland's turn, I guess, to host such an event. I was posted outside there across the street with my banner making it known that the European Union is a fascist enterprise. There was this fella, a strange guy, known locally as the Black Pope. He was very with today they would call him a Eurosceptic, and the whole idea is that you have to be right wing to be a Eurosceptic. But the fact of the matter is that Eurosceptics, they used to be left wing. My grandfather, an IRA man, in his local paper wrote about how Ireland shouldn't join the EEC as it was back then. But no, we're, all that's been shoved down the memory hole. No, you have to be right wing to be against the EU now. But this Black Pope guy, he decided to tail two of the, or maybe 2 or 3, 4 of the ministers for justice as they were being shown around Galway by our mayor, or something really inane like that. He was handing out flyers and, making sure that, people got his flyer as they were making their way through the high street of Galway. There were Gardaí, Guardians of the Peace, tailing these guys, making sure they were safe. I guess they thought this peaceful protester was, a major threat. He was suddenly just going to whip out a gun and, kill them or something. Because they grabbed him. And, there's one of these old, like 150-year-old buildings there. It's now houses a pub. I think it's called Taft's. They just grabbed him by the scruff and just pushed him against this wall. Back of his head, bang, against this stone wall. There was blood. He clearly had a concussion at the very least. And then they dragged him off to a cell. You can't do that in most places unless you're in a country that is of the Commonwealth, or formerly, so-called formerly of the Commonwealth, like Ireland, where you have the common law system. There's a breach of the peace. He was in breach of the peace. He was talking loudly. I'm sure he wasn't screaming, but he was talking loudly. That's, suddenly that's it's going to freak people out, man. They can't handle someone being vocal in the middle of the street. We got to take care of this guy. Got to give him permanent brain damage, and then haul him into a fucking cell in the local station to bleed out. The guy did not get medical attention until he was released the next day. So, are we free here in Ireland? Yeah, I don't know. Are we? Do you think? Do you think maybe I'm overreacting with all this stuff going on in my beautiful country? In the land of the Tuatha De Danann, in the land of Porrick Pyrrhus, great people like my grandfather, W.B. Yeats, the land that produced so many great thinkers and writers, poets, musicians. I mean, you just look at, 99% of the great authors that Britain boasts about. Oh, these are the great British authors. Yeah, kind of turns out that, they were Irish. Yeah, this is what Erin has been reduced to. She weeps. She weeps. Oh, fuck. I gotta kill this. Because we haven't been broadcasting. Yay! God damn it, people are full of fucking garbage. Seriously, they're full of shit.